Captain Dong-Woo Kim rubbed his tired eyes as he walked down the long corridor of his ship, the Harmony's Edge. 23 years. 23 long years since humans first met aliens, and he had spent most of that time saying yes sir and of course to every demand they made. Today had been no different. The Vortani Empire wanted more mining rights on human worlds, and the peaceful Kalari needed protection from being kicked off their home planets. As always, humans found a way to make everyone happy. The bridge was quiet when Dong-Woo entered. His crew looked as tired as he felt. They had been negotiating for 18 hours straight, trying to find a solution that would keep the peace. That was what humans did best, everyone said. They were the galaxy's peacekeepers, the ones who could solve any problem with words instead of weapons. "Captain," his communication officer called out, "we're getting a message from the outer colonies." "It's marked urgent," Dong-Woo sighed. "Another problem to solve. Another angry alien species that needed calming down." "Put it through." The screen flickered to life, showing a panicked human face. It was Commander Yujin Park from the colony of New Seoul. Her usually neat uniform was torn, and smoke filled the air behind her. "This is New Seoul Colony calling any human ship." Yujin's voice cracked with fear. "We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Multiple alien warships in orbit. They're not responding to our calls. They're just firing." Dong-Woo felt his blood turn cold. "Commander Park, this is Captain Kim. What ships? Who's attacking you?" "It's the Hegemony Coalition," Yujin replied, her image shaking as explosions rocked her command center. 7 different species all working together. They said humans are too weak to deserve space. They said we need to learn our place. The communication cut to static for a moment. Then Yujin's face appeared again. This time there were tears in her eyes. "Captain, they're targeting the schools. The hospitals. They're not trying to capture the colony. They're trying to kill everyone." Dong-Woo gripped his chair. In 23 years of dealing with aliens, no one had ever attacked human civilians. There had been arguments, trade disputes, even some small fights between military ships. But never this. Never the wholesale slaughter of innocent people. "How many people are on New Seoul?" he asked quietly. 2.3 million, Yujin whispered. "Mostly families, children. We built this place to be safe, to show the galaxy that humans could create something beautiful." The screen suddenly filled with light as another explosion shook Yujin's command center. When the image cleared, half her staff was gone. Flood covered the walls. "Captain," Yujin's voice was barely audible now, "tell them we tried to surrender. Tell them we offered to give them anything they wanted. They laughed at us. They said humans need to learn that being nice doesn't make you strong." In the background, Dong-Woo could hear something that made his heart break. Children's voices, calling for their parents as the orbital bombardment continued. Young voices that would never grow up, never see another sunrise, never have the chance to explore the galaxy their parents had worked so hard to join. "Captain Kim," Yujin said, looking directly into the camera, "promise me something. Promise me that when people ask what happened here, you'll tell them the truth. We died because we were kind. We died because we chose words over weapons. We died because we believed that being good was enough." The screen went white, then black, then nothing but static. Dong-Woo stared at the empty screen for a long time. Around him, his crew sat in shocked silence. Finally, his communication officer spoke up. "Captain, should we send a message to Earth Command? Should we call the Galactic Council?" Dong-Woo didn't answer right away. He was thinking about all the times he had swallowed his pride to keep the peace. All the times humans had been insulted, cheated, or pushed around, and they had simply smiled and asked how they could make things better. All the times they had chosen to be the bigger species, to turn the other cheek, to prove that intelligence was better than violence. 2.3 million people gone, because the galaxy thought humans were too soft to fight back. "Sir?" his officer asked again. "What are your orders?" Dong-Woo stood up slowly. He thought about his own children back on Earth, playing in parks that might not exist tomorrow if the galaxy decided humans were too weak to defend themselves. He thought about every human colony, every human ship, every human family that was now at risk because someone had decided to test humanity's limits. "Send a priority message to Fleet Admiral Hyun-Woo Lee," he said quietly. "Tell him what happened. Tell him exactly what they said. Tell him that the Hegemony Coalition wants to know what humans do when we're pushed too far." The communication officer's hands shook as he typed the message. Everyone knew Admiral Lee. He was old Earth military from the time before First Contact when humans still fought wars against each other. He had been the one to suggest that humanity should present itself as peaceful to the galaxy, to hide their true capabilities in the name of making friends. Message sent. Captain, the officer reported. Dongwu nodded. Now send another message. To every human ship, every human colony, every human station in the galaxy. Use the old military codes, the ones we were told to forget. Sir, those codes haven't been used in over 20 years. I know, Dongwu said. Tell them it's time to remember who we used to be before we decided to be nice. As his ship turned toward Earth, Dongwu thought about the words Yu Jin had spoken before she died. She was wrong about one thing. Humans hadn't died because they were kind. They had died because the galaxy mistook kindness for weakness. That was a mistake that would not be made twice. Back on Earth, Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo Lee received the message in his office. He read it 3 times, his face growing harder with each word. Then he stood up, walked to his window, and looked out at the peaceful blue planet below. Soon he knew that peace would end. The galaxy wanted to see what humans did when their patience ran out. They were about to find out. Ambassador So Young Choi walked into the Galactic Council chambers with a smile on her face, just like she had done every day for the past 8 years. The other ambassadors barely looked up as she took her seat. To them, she was just another human diplomat, probably here to complain about the attack on New Seoul and ask for help that would never come. The council recognizes the human representative, announced the Galactic chairman, a tall alien with blue skin and too many arms. I assume you wish to discuss the recent unpleasantness? So Young nodded politely. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I would like to address the destruction of New Seoul Colony by the Hegemony Coalition. Several aliens shifted in their seats. The Hegemony Coalition had 7 members on the council, and they all looked smug. One of them, Ambassador Croxus, actually laughed. Unpleasantness? Croxus said. We prefer to call it education. Your species needed to learn that being soft does not earn respect in this galaxy. So Young's smile never wavered. I see, and what would you suggest we do about it? Accept your place, another Hegemony member spoke up. Stop pretending to be equal to warrior races. Accept that some species are meant to lead, and others are meant to follow. That's very interesting advice, So Young said calmly. And if we refuse? The Hegemony ambassadors looked at each other and laughed again. Then you'll learn the same lesson as New Seoul, Croxus said. How many colonies are you willing to lose before you understand? So Young nodded as if she was seriously considering the question. I'll take your words back to my government. I'm sure they'll find your position very educational. As the council session ended, other ambassadors came up to So Young to offer their sympathy. They all said the same thing. Humans should file a formal complaint, maybe ask for economic sanctions, definitely try to negotiate a peaceful solution. That was what humans always did. What none of them knew was that while So Young smiled and thanked them for their concern, her earpiece was receiving constant updates from across human space. Updates that would have terrified them if they knew what they meant. Far from the capital world where the council met, things were happening that no alien spy network had ever detected. Colonel Minho Jang stood in the control room of what appeared to be a simple mining station in the outer rim of human space. For 15 years, this station had produced rare metals and sent them to human colonies. Every alien scan had confirmed it was exactly what it appeared to be. But now the mining equipment was folding away, revealing something else entirely. Weapons manufacturing systems that had been built piece by piece over 2 decades, disguised as innocent industrial equipment. Assembly lines that could produce more firepower in a day than most species could build in a year. How long until we're fully operational? Minho asked his chief engineer. 6 hours, sir. All the civilian equipment has been moved to storage. The weapon systems are coming online now. Minho nodded. Around him, people who had spent years pretending to be miners and engineers were putting on military uniforms they had kept hidden for decades. These weren't civilians suddenly pressed into service. These were soldiers who had been waiting, training, preparing for the day when humanity's patience would finally run out. Across human space, similar transformations were taking place. Captain Hee-Won Nam walked through the cargo bay of her ship, the Merchant's Dream. For 12 years, this vessel had carried trade goods between human and alien worlds. She had hosted dinner parties for alien dignitaries, negotiated trade deals, and always made sure her guests felt welcome. Those guests had no idea that the cargo containers lining her ship's walls were fake. Behind them lay docking bays filled with fighter craft that existed in no official human military registry. Her crew of traders and diplomats were actually pilots and weapons specialists who had maintained their cover for over a decade. "Captain," her first officer said, handing her a military uniform. "Orders from Earth Command. All ships are to begin Phase 2 of Silent Thunder." Hewan looked at the uniform she hadn't worn in public for 20 years. "Any word on how the aliens are reacting?" "They think we're evacuating our outer colonies. Their spy networks are reporting increased ship traffic, but they assume it's civilians running away in fear." Hewan smiled grimly. The Hegemony Coalition had expected humans to panic, to flee, to beg for mercy. Instead, humanity was moving pieces into position for a game the aliens didn't even know they were playing. Back on Earth, Fleet Admiral Hyun-Woo Lee stood before the Emergency Human Council. The room was filled with people who officially didn't exist. Military leaders who had supposedly retired years ago, scientists who had been working on civilian projects, intelligence officers who had spent decades pretending to be cultural attachés and trade representatives. "Ladies and gentlemen," Lee began, "for 23 years we have presented humanity as a peaceful species. We chose diplomacy over warfare, kindness over strength, patience over revenge. We did this not because we were weak, but because we hoped the galaxy could be better than it was." He paused, looking around the room at faces he had known for decades, people who had sacrificed their military careers to maintain humanity's peaceful image, people who had watched aliens insult their species while staying silent to keep the peace. "The attack on New Sol has shown us that our hopes were misplaced. The galaxy mistakes our kindness for weakness, our patience for cowardice. They believe that because we choose not to fight, we cannot fight." The room was completely silent. Outside, normal life continued on Earth. People went to work, children played in parks, families had dinner together. None of them knew that in this room, their representatives were making a decision that would change the galaxy forever. "Project Silent Thunder is now fully activated," Lee continued. "Every hidden weapons facility, every disguised warship, every sleeper agent we have placed in alien governments over the past 2 decades. All of it is now online and awaiting orders." General Mi Young-yu stood up. "Admiral, what are our rules of engagement?" Lee's expression didn't change. "There are no rules, General. For 23 years we played by everyone else's rules. We accepted insults, we tolerated abuse, we turned the other cheek no matter how badly we were treated. That ends now." He walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Somewhere out there, families were going about their daily lives, unaware that their peaceful existence had been built on a foundation of hidden strength. Strength that was about to be revealed to a galaxy that had forgotten why humans had once been feared. The Hegemony Coalition wanted to know what humans do when pushed too far. Lee said quietly, "Send the activation codes to all units. It's time to show them." As the codes went out across human space, a transformation began that would terrify the galaxy. The peaceful traders, the friendly diplomats, the helpful scientists that aliens had grown comfortable with were about to reveal their true nature. And the species that had chosen mercy for over 2 decades was about to demonstrate why that choice had been an act of supreme confidence, not weakness. Admiral Croxus woke up to alarms screaming throughout his flagship. The massive Hegemony Coalition battleship, the pride of conquest, shuddered as explosions rocked nearby space. Through his cabin window he could see the bright flashes of weapons fire where there should have been only empty darkness. "Report," he barked into his communicator as he rushed toward the bridge. "Sir, we're under attack," came the panicked reply. "Multiple contacts, unknown ship types." They appeared out of nowhere and opened fire on the depot stations. Croxus ran faster. The depot stations were supposed to be secret, hidden in empty space where no human ships ever traveled. They contained enough fuel and ammunition to supply the entire Hegemony fleet for months. How could humans have found them? When he reached the bridge, the scene was chaos. His officers were shouting conflicting reports while tactical displays showed a nightmare scenario. 7 depot stations gone, 3 communication relays destroyed. The main shipyard at Tarkus Prime reduced to floating debris. "How many human ships?" Croxus demanded. We don't know, sir." his tactical officer stammered. They hit us and disappeared before our sensors could get a clear count. Some kind of stealth technology we've never seen before. That's impossible. Humans don't have advanced stealth technology. They're merchants and diplomats, not warriors. But even as he said it, Croxus knew something was terribly wrong. The attacks weren't random. Every target had been chosen for maximum strategic damage. Whoever was commanding the human forces knew exactly where the hegemony's most important facilities were located, and exactly how to cripple them most efficiently. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. General Tai Jin Quan stood on the bridge of a ship that officially didn't exist, watching his tactical display with satisfaction. For 3 months, he had studied every piece of intelligence that human diplomats and traders had gathered over the past 20 years. Now that intelligence was paying off, "Target confirmed destroyed," reported Captain Sun Hee Lim from her stealth destroyer, the Ghost of Seoul. "Hegemony Station Prime is completely offline." Tae-jin nodded. Station Prime had been the coalition's supposedly impregnable fortress, a massive structure that coordinated military operations across 3 sectors. Sun Hee's ship had appeared directly behind it, fired a single shot from weapons that hadn't existed in any alien database, and vanished before the station's shields could even activate. "Ghost of Seoul, what's your status?" Tae-jin asked. "All systems green, General. The quantum phase cannons performed exactly as designed. Their shields couldn't even detect our weapons until they were already inside the barrier." Tae-jin smiled grimly. The quantum phase cannons were a human invention, developed in secret laboratories that aliens thought were working on improved farming equipment. Like so many human civilian technologies, they had dual purposes that no one outside humanity suspected. "Excellent work, Captain. Proceed to your next target." As Sun Hee's ship disappeared back into the void, Tae-jin turned to his intelligence officer. "Commander Jin-Woo Park, what are you hearing from Hegemony Communications?" Jin-Woo looked up from his console, where he was monitoring dozens of alien communication channels. "Panic, sir. They're calling this impossible, asking how we found their hidden bases, demanding to know what ships we're using. And their reinforcements? Moving exactly as we predicted. Admiral Vexthal is pulling ships from the outer territories to defend their core worlds. They're following Defense Pattern 7, just like our analysts said they would." Tae-jin nodded with satisfaction. For 20 years, human cultural exchange officers like Colonel Jae Hyun-oh had lived on hegemony worlds, learning their languages, studying their military tactics, and memorizing the locations of every important facility. The aliens had thought they were building friendships. In reality, they had been providing humanity with the most complete intelligence network in galactic history. Back on the hegemony flagship, Admiral Croxus was receiving reports that made no sense. "Sir, they hit the fuel depot at Zerion, also the shipyard at Malik's Rest, and the communication hub at Zentara Prime." "All at the same time?" Croxus asked in disbelief. "Yes, sir. Synchronized attacks across 12 systems. Whatever they're using, they have a lot of it." Croxus stared at the tactical display. In 6 hours, the humans had crippled facilities that had taken the hegemony decades to build. Ships that were supposed to be invisible had appeared, struck with devastating precision, and vanished. Most terrifying of all, every attack had targeted exactly the right place to cause maximum damage. "Get me a line to Earth," he ordered. "I want to speak to their Admiral Lee." "Sir, are you going to demand they surrender?" Croxus looked at the destruction on his screens. Facilities that had never been attacked, bases that no enemy had ever found, weapons that had never failed, all gone in a matter of hours. "No," he said quietly. "I'm going to ask them how they did it." The communication screen flickered to life, showing the face of Fleet Admiral Hyun-woo Lee. The human looked calm, almost bored, as if the systematic destruction of hegemony military infrastructure was just another routine day. "Admiral Croxus," Lee said politely, "I understand you wanted to speak with me." "How?" Croxus demanded. "How did you find our hidden bases? How did you get ships past our sensors? How did you know exactly where to strike?" Lee's expression didn't change. 23 years ago, when we first met your species, you told us that humans needed to learn their place in the galaxy. We took that advice very seriously. What does that mean? It means we spent 23 years learning everything about you. Every base you built, every ship you launched, every tactical doctrine you developed. While you saw us as harmless diplomats and merchants, we were studying you like scientists study laboratory specimens. Croxus felt a chill run down his spine. You've been spying on us for over 2 decades? Not spying, Lee corrected. Learning. You invited us into your homes, your military academies, your government buildings. You showed us your weapons, explained your strategies, even gave us tours of your secret facilities. All because you thought we were too weak to be a threat. The hegemony admiral stared at the screen in growing horror. The cultural exchange programs were intelligence-gathering operations, Lee confirmed. Every human student who studied on your worlds was actually a military analyst. Every tourist who visited your facilities was mapping them for future reference. Every trader who sold goods at your bases was learning about your defenses. But you're supposed to be peaceful. You always chose diplomacy over war. Lee's smile was colder than the space between stars. We chose diplomacy because we were confident in our ability to win any war that might become necessary. Today you took away that choice. Now you get to see what humans are like when we stop being patient. The communication ended, leaving Croxus staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew sat in stunned silence. They had thought they were fighting the weak, peaceful humans they had known for decades. Instead, they were facing an enemy that had spent over 20 years preparing for this exact moment, and it was only the first day. On the second day of the war, the Hegemony Coalition tried to fight back. Admiral Vexthal, the supreme commander of all coalition forces, gathered every available ship and launched a massive counterattack against what they thought was the main human fleet near the Centauri system. They found nothing there except empty space and a recorded message. Greetings. Admiral Vexthal, came the voice of Admiral Kyung-Soo Han from the human recording. By the time you receive this message, your reinforcement fleets from the Outer Rim will have been destroyed. Your supply convoys from the core worlds will have been captured. And your secret fortress at Drakthal will be under siege. We suggest you check your communications. Vexthal's face went pale as reports flooded in from across coalition space. The humans hadn't been retreating to Centauri. They had been leading him away from the real battle. While he chased shadows, human forces had struck at a dozen locations simultaneously. How many ships do they have? Vexthal demanded of his intelligence officer. We don't know, sir. Every time our scouts find them, they disappear. But they're everywhere at once. It's like they have fleets we never knew existed. What the coalition didn't understand was that they were fighting an enemy who had been preparing for this war longer than some of their soldiers had been alive. Admiral Kyung-Soo Han stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Unbroken Resolve, watching his tactical display with satisfaction. His ship was part of the first hidden fleet, 300 vessels that had spent 15 years disguised as civilian cargo haulers. Admiral, reported Captain Na Young-Jon from her destroyer squadron. The Hegemony's third battle group is moving to defend their shipyards at Korvac Prime. Excellent, Han replied. They're still thinking like this is a normal war. Signal all units, implement Plan 7. Plan 7 was one of hundreds of scenarios that human strategists had developed over the past 2 decades. Every possible hegemony response had been anticipated, studied, and countered before the war even began. The aliens were fighting desperately to defend assets they thought were important, not realizing that humans had already decided which targets actually mattered. Lieutenant Yoon Ji-song received her orders while sitting in what looked like a normal civilian shuttle. For 6 years, she had flown this route between human and alien worlds, carrying passengers and small cargo. The hegemony checkpoint guards knew her by name, often joking about the harmless human girl who always brought them coffee. Those same guards would have been terrified to know that her shuttle was actually a heavily armed fighter, and that she was one of the best combat pilots humanity had ever produced. Songbird Squadron, "This is Control," came the voice in her earpiece. "You are clear to reveal and engage." Yoonji smiled as she pressed a series of hidden buttons. Her shuttle's outer hull peeled away like flower petals, revealing the sleek fighter underneath. Around her, 24 other civilian craft were undergoing the same transformation. "Songbird leader to all units," she said into her radio. "Let's show them what human patience looks like when it runs out." The hegemony forces at Korvac Prime detected the approaching human ships and prepared to fight off another small raid. Instead, they found themselves facing a coordinated assault by fighters that moved faster than anything in their database, armed with weapons that tore through their shields like paper. But the real shock came when they tried to retreat. Every escape route was blocked by human ships that had somehow appeared behind them. Every safe system they tried to reach already contained waiting human forces. It was as if the humans could predict every move before it was made. Colonel Jae-hyun-oh watched the battle from his command ship, feeling a grim satisfaction. For 5 years he had lived on hegemony worlds as a cultural exchange officer, learning their languages and customs. The aliens had thought he was there to build friendship between their species. In reality, he had memorized every military base, every supply depot, every possible retreat route. "Sir," his communication officer reported, "Admiral Vexthal is requesting a ceasefire to discuss terms." "What does he want to discuss?" Jae-hyun asked. "Prisoner exchanges, protected zones for civilians, rules of engagement, standard military protocol." Jae-hyun almost laughed. The hegemony was still thinking this was a normal war between civilized species. They didn't understand that they had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "Send this reply," he said. "There will be no ceasefire, no negotiations, no rules of engagement. You wanted to see what humans do when pushed too far. Keep watching." By the end of the second day, the hegemony coalition controlled less territory than they had when the war started. Their carefully planned defenses had been bypassed, their secret bases discovered and destroyed, their reinforcement schedules predicted and countered. The third day brought even worse news. General Mi Young-yu's forces had taken control of the coalition's main supply routes, cutting off fuel and ammunition to their scattered fleets. Every time hegemony ships tried to regroup, they found human forces already waiting for them. "How do they know where we're going before we know ourselves?" demanded Admiral Croxus during an emergency coalition meeting. The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Chang-ho Lee, who had spent 12 years as a xenobiologist studying coalition species, sent them a message that explained everything. "For over a decade, I have studied your biology, your psychology, your cultural patterns. I know how each of your species thinks under stress, how you make decisions in crisis situations, how your military doctrines were developed. When you move your fleets, I can predict where they will go because I understand the minds that command them better than you understand them yourselves." The message continued with even more disturbing revelations. Every human scientist who worked in your laboratories was actually gathering intelligence. Every human diplomat who attended your strategy meetings was memorizing your plans. Every human merchant who sold goods to your military was learning about your capabilities. We have spent 23 years preparing for this war while you believed we were incapable of fighting one. On the fourth day, the coalition's morale began to collapse. Reports came in of human ships appearing and disappearing at will, of battles won before the enemy even knew they were being fought, of strategic positions captured by forces that seemed to materialize from empty space. Captain Seung-min Kim demonstrated the true extent of human preparation when his destroyer squadron performed a coordinated attack on the coalition's fortress world of Malek's Rest. The planet was supposed to be impregnable, protected by orbital platforms that had never been defeated. Kim's ships appeared directly inside the defensive perimeter, having used jump coordinates that human spies had calculated years earlier. Before the platforms could react, precise strikes crippled their power systems and weapons arrays. The attack lasted 17 minutes and left the planet defenseless. But the most terrifying moment came when coalition forces received a message from General Mi Young-yu herself. The human appeared on their screens with a calm expression that was somehow more frightening than any threat. "You asked what humans do when pushed too far," she said quietly. "The answer is simple. We stop pretending to be what you want us to be and start being what we actually are. You wanted to fight warriors instead of diplomats. Your wish has been granted." As the fourth day ended, the hegemony coalition faced a terrible truth. They weren't fighting the peaceful, patient humans they had known for decades. They were fighting a species that had spent over 20 years studying their enemies while pretending to be friends. And every advantage they thought they had was actually a weakness that humans had been planning to exploit. The galaxy's most patient species had finally lost their patience, and the universe was about to learn why that patience had been a gift rather than a weakness. The fifth day began with silence. Across coalition space, communication networks that had operated for centuries went dark. Supply lines that had never been threatened were cut. Fleets that had ruled entire sectors found themselves trapped in systems with no fuel and no ammunition. Supreme Commander Vexthal sat in his command center, staring at a tactical display that showed the complete collapse of everything his species had built. In 4 days, the humans had systematically dismantled an empire that had taken 300 years to create. "Sir," his aide whispered, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." The screen flickered to life, showing the face of Captain Sung-Min Kim. The human looked tired but determined, standing on the bridge of a ship that had appeared from nowhere to destroy the Coalition's last major stronghold. "Supreme Commander Vexthal," Kim said formally, "I am authorized to offer you one final chance to surrender." "Surrender?" Vexthal laughed bitterly. "You've already won. What more do you want?" "We want you to understand something," Kim replied. "This wasn't a war. This was an execution. You thought you were fighting a battle against equals. Instead, you were being eliminated by a superior force that had been studying you for decades." Vexthal felt his heart sink. "What do you mean?" "I mean that every move you've made, every strategy you've tried, every retreat you've attempted, we predicted all of it years ago. You're not fighting human military doctrine. You're dancing to a script we wrote before this war even started." The Coalition leader stared at the screen in growing horror. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the day we met your species," Kim answered honestly. 23 years ago, when you told us that humans needed to learn their place in the galaxy, we decided to learn everything about you instead. Every weakness, every fear, every possible way to destroy you completely." Behind Kim, other humans were visible on the bridge. Men and women who had spent decades pretending to be peaceful civilians, now revealed as the most effective military force the galaxy had ever seen. "The question now," Kim continued, "is whether you want this to end with your surrender, or with the complete extinction of every Coalition species." Dr. Chang Ho Lee had been working for 72 hours straight, but his research was finally complete. The same man who had spent 12 years studying Coalition biology as a friendly scientist had now weaponized everything he had learned. "General Yu," he reported to his commanding officer, "the biological agents are ready for deployment." Mi Young Yu looked at the data with a mixture of pride and revulsion. "These will target each species specifically." "Yes, ma'am. Tailored diseases that will affect only Coalition members, leaving other aliens and humans completely unharmed. Each pathogen is designed to exploit the unique biological weaknesses I discovered during my research years." "And the delivery system?" "Already in place. Remember those medical supplies we've been selling to Coalition worlds for the past decade? They contain microscopic deployment devices that activate on my command." Mi Young stared at the reports. With a single order, she could release diseases that would kill every member of the Coalition species within weeks. Diseases that their medical knowledge could never cure because they were based on biological secrets that only humans knew. "Doctor," she said quietly, "how many Coalition civilians would die?" "All of them, ma'am. The agents don't distinguish between military and civilian targets." Mi Young nodded slowly. This was the moment when humanity would decide what kind of species they really were. They had the power to commit genocide on a scale the galaxy had never seen. The question was whether they would use it. Meanwhile, Captain Na Young John was leading the final assault on the Coalition's last fortress. The planet Drakthal had been their ultimate fallback position, protected by defensive systems that had never been breached. But like everything else the Coalition had built, it had been designed by minds that humans understood better than the aliens understood themselves. "Songbird Squadron, this is Reaper Leader," came Yunji Song's voice over the radio. "Defensive grid is down. You're clear for landing." Nayang's ships descended through an atmosphere thick with smoke from burning military installations. Her Marines, people who had spent years disguised as tourists and exchange students, moved through the fortress with deadly efficiency. They knew exactly where to go because they had memorized the layout during cultural visits years earlier. The Coalition's final stand lasted 3 hours. Then silence fell over their last stronghold. Back in space, Admiral Kyung-Soo Han received reports from across human space. The hidden fleets that had remained concealed for decades were now fully revealed. Patrolling systems that belonged to humanity's enemies. Ships that aliens had believed were cargo haulers were now showing their true nature as advanced warships. "Admiral," his communication officer reported, "were receiving surrender requests from 47 Coalition worlds." "And their military response?" "Non-existent, sir. They have no functional fleets left, no command structure, no ability to coordinate resistance. Total military collapse." Han nodded grimly. The coalition had learned what happened when a patient species finally lost its patience. They had discovered that humanity's greatest deception wasn't hiding their military strength, it was convincing the galaxy that mercy was weakness rather than choice. But the most important moment came when General Mi Young, you stood before a video camera to address not just the coalition but the entire galaxy. Her message would be broadcast to every alien species, every government, every military leader who might be watching. To the hegemony coalition and all who would threaten humanity, she began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had just demonstrated the galaxy's greatest military achievement. You have seen what we do when our patience ends. You have learned what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. She paused, looking directly into the camera. But understand this, we could have done worse. Much worse. The biological weapons we developed could have eliminated your species entirely. The military assets we revealed represent only a fraction of our true capabilities. We chose restraint even in our revenge. Around her, the command center was filled with humans who had sacrificed decades of their lives to maintain their species' peaceful image. People who had swallowed insults, endured condescension, and accepted treatment as inferior beings, all while building the most sophisticated military intelligence network in galactic history. We return now to our peaceful pursuits, Mi Young continued. But remember what you have seen. Every human diplomat you meet has studied your weaknesses. Every human trader who visits your worlds knows how to destroy your defenses. Every human scientist working in your laboratories understands exactly how to eliminate your species. She leaned forward slightly, her expression becoming more intense. We choose to be your friends, your partners, your allies. We choose this freely as equals, not as subordinates. But never forget that it is a choice. And choices can be changed. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. In 6 days, humanity had revealed that their greatest lie wasn't about their military capabilities. It was about their nature. They weren't the peaceful species everyone thought they knew. They were apex predators who had chosen to appear harmless. As the 5th day ended, the hegemony coalition faced a decision that would define their future. Surrender completely and accept whatever terms humanity offered, or face the full consequences of pushing the galaxy's most patient species past their breaking point. Either way, the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted forever. The species that had spent 23 years accepting insults and abuse had finally shown their true strength. And the universe would never be the same. The purple flames of the Zephyrian war cruiser lit up the dark space around Haven's Rest colony. High Commander Veltar stood on his bridge, watching the human settlement through the main screen. His 4 arms moved across the control panels, with practiced ease. The battle would be over soon. Shield strength of the colony? Veltar asked his weapons officer. Down to 60%, Commander. Following standard protocol, they should surrender when it drops to 40%. Veltar nodded his scaled head. This was how war worked in the galaxy. It had been this way for 3,000 years. Every civilized species followed the same rules. You fired energy weapons from a safe distance. You calculated shield strength and weapon power. When the math said you lost, you surrendered. Clean. Simple. Civilized. The Zephyrians had conquered 47 worlds using these exact methods. Their energy cannons were the most powerful in the galaxy. Their shields could deflect any known weapon. Their computers could calculate the outcome of any battle before it started. Any response from the humans? Veltar asked. Strategic analyst Kixara looked up from her data screen. She was smaller than most Zephyrians, with bright green scales instead of the usual purple. They sent a distress signal into deep space, Commander. Standard emergency broadcast. Asking for help? Veltar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. From whom? We studied their species. They are primitive. They still use chemical rockets for some of their ships. Their weapons are mostly kinetic projectiles, ancient technology. Kixara frowned at her screen. Something bothered her about the human databases she had been studying. Their history was strange. Every other species in the galaxy had a clear pattern. They developed technology, fought a few wars, then evolved past violence. War became a science with rules and calculations. But humans were different. Their history was nothing but war, tribe against tribe. Nation against nation. Planet against planet. They had been fighting for 10,000 years and never stopped. Even their entertainment was about fighting. Their sports were combat. Their games were war. Commander, the weapons officer reported. Colony shields are now at 45%. Good. Prepare to receive their surrender, Veltar said. He had done this so many times. The colony would surrender. The humans would accept Zephyrian rule. Maybe some would resist at first, but they would learn. Everyone learned. Commander. The communications officer's voice was sharp with surprise. Long-range sensors detect a ship approaching very fast. Veltar turned to look at the tactical display. A single red dot was moving toward them at incredible speed. What kind of ship? Unknown class, Commander. It's huge. Much larger than any recorded human vessel. Kixara's data screen lit up with new information. Commander, the ship is transmitting a message. Put it through. The bridge speakers crackled with static, then a human voice came through. It was calm, cold, and spoke with complete confidence. This is Admiral Marcus, Kane of the USS Vengeance. You have attacked human civilians. Prepare for consequences. Veltar stared at the communication panel. Where was the request for negotiation? Where was the plea for mercy? Where was the offer to surrender? Communications. Respond to their transmission. Tell them we are willing to discuss terms. No response, Commander. They have cut communication. The red dot on the tactical display was getting closer. Much closer than any civilized ship would dare approach. Veltar had 12 cruisers in his fleet. Each one was armed with the most advanced energy weapons in the galaxy. His shields could stop anything. Time to intercept? He asked. 12 minutes, Commander. Veltar activated the fleet communication system. All ships, prepare for engagement. Standard formation. This will be a simple demonstration of Zephyrian superiority, but Kixara was still studying her data screen, and what she saw made her scales turn pale. She had been reading human military history. She thought she understood what she was seeing, but it seemed impossible. Commander, she said quietly, I think we may have made an error. What kind of error? We assumed humans fight like we do, like civilized species do. But their history, Commander, they have never stopped fighting. Not for a single generation. Every human military advance has been tested in actual combat. Their weapons, their tactics, their training. It's all real. Veltar dismissed her concerns with a wave of his hand. They are primitive, chemical rockets and kinetic weapons against our energy cannons. The battle computer gives us victory probability of 98%. But Commander, their kinetic weapons... Kixara tried to explain, but Veltar was not listening. On the main screen, the human ship had dropped out of hyperspace. It was massive, larger than 3 Zephyrian cruisers combined. Its hull was dark gray, covered with what looked like weapon ports. But they were not energy weapon ports. They were something else. All ships, target the human vessel, Veltar ordered. Prepare to fire on my command. The USS Vengeance continued to approach. It made no attempt to dodge or weave. It did not request terms. It did not try to negotiate. It simply flew straight toward the Zephyrian fleet like a dark arrow. Commander, the weapons officer reported, they are not following standard engagement protocols. They are approaching to point-blank range. Then they are fools, Veltar said. Fire all weapons. 12 Zephyrian cruisers opened fire at once. Purple energy beams lanced across space, striking the human ship. The energy should have overloaded their shields instantly. Instead, the beams seemed to splash harmlessly against the hull. What? Veltar stared at the screen. How are their shields absorbing that much energy? Commander, the weapons officer said in a shaking voice. I don't think those are energy shields. The USS Vengeance had stopped approaching. It hung in space 50,000 kilometers away, close enough that Veltar could see details of its hull. And what he saw made no sense. The human ship was covered in armor, physical armor, thick metal plates that absorbed energy instead of deflecting it. No civilized species had used physical armor for 1,000 years. Energy shields were more efficient, but as Veltar watched, ports opened along the human ship's hull. Not energy weapon ports, something else entirely. "What are they doing?" he whispered. Admiral Marcus Kane sat in his command chair aboard the Mir USS Vengeance, watching the Zephyrian fleet through his own main screen. His tactical officer, Commander Lisa Brooks, was running final calculations. 12 enemy cruisers in standard defensive formation, she reported. Energy weapons only. No kinetic defenses detected. Kane nodded. They fight like everyone else, in the galaxy. Same rules, same tactics, same weaknesses. Weapons ready, Admiral. Kane looked at the screen one more time. The aliens had attacked a human colony. 50,000 civilians were depending on him. In the old days, back on Earth, there would have been long debates about rules of engagement and diplomatic solutions. But Kane was not from the old days. He was from the new human military, the one that had learned from 10,000 years of war, the one that understood a simple truth. Sometimes you had to fight. "Fire," he said quietly. The USS Vengeance fired its main guns, not energy weapons, kinetic weapons. Tungsten rods accelerated to near light speed by magnetic fields. The rods were simple pieces of metal, but they carried the energy of nuclear weapons. The first Zephyrian cruiser simply vanished. One moment, it was there. The next, it was expanding cloud of debris and vapor. On his bridge, Veltar watched his fleet's lead ship die and felt something he had never felt before in his 300 years of life. Fear. High Commander Veltar stared at the empty space where his lead cruiser had been. His mind could not process what he had just seen. The ship had not been disabled. It had not surrendered. It had been completely destroyed in less than a second. "Report," he shouted at his bridge crew. "The human weapon, it was not energy-based," his weapons officer said, his voice shaking. "It was a physical projectile moving at near light speed. Our shields could not deflect it." "That's impossible. No one uses kinetic weapons anymore. They are primitive, strategic." Analyst Kixara looked up from her screen, her green scales now completely pale. "Commander, I have been studying human weapons technology. They never stopped developing kinetic systems. While we perfected energy shields to stop energy weapons, they perfected projectile weapons to go through energy shields." Veltar felt panic rising in his chest. "All ships, evasive maneuvers, maintain distance," but the USS Vengeance was already firing again. More tungsten rods shot across space like invisible spears. The second Zephyrian cruiser tried to dodge, but it was too slow. The kinetic projectile punched through its hull like paper, and the ship exploded from the inside out. Admiral Kane watched the second alien ship die and turned to his tactical officer. "Analysis, Commander Brooks?" Lisa Brooks studied her readouts with professional calm. "Their ships are built for energy weapon combat only, Admiral. Thin hulls, large shield generators, no armor plating. They cannot handle kinetic impact." "What about their formation?" "Standard defensive globe. Every ship is exactly where their computers tell them to be. No creativity, no adaptation." Kane nodded. This was what human military commanders had always known, but the galaxy had forgotten. Rigid tactics worked fine until you met someone who did not follow the same rules. "Captain Murphy," Kane spoke into his communication system. "Captain." Jake Murphy's voice came back immediately. "Yes, Admiral. Prepare boarding parties." There was a moment of silence. "Sir, did you say boarding parties?" "You heard correctly, Captain. We are going to take one of their ships intact." Veltar watched his tactical display in growing horror. The human ship was not maintaining safe distance like any civilized vessel would. Instead, it was moving closer to his remaining ships. Much closer. "What are they doing?" he asked. "Unknown, Commander. This behavior does not match any recorded combat pattern." Kixara was frantically reading through human military databases. What she found made her want to hide under her workstation. "Commander, humans have something called boarding actions. They actually send soldiers onto enemy ships during combat." "That is insane. Who would risk their soldiers in such a way?" "Humans, Commander. They have been doing it for thousands of years. From their wooden sailing ships to their space vessels. Veltar could not believe what he was hearing. No civilized species fights hand to hand. We have energy weapons, we have shields. Combat is conducted at safe distances with mathematical precision. Commander, his communications officer interrupted, the human ship is launching small craft. On the main screen, Veltar watched dozens of small ships pour out of the USS Vengeance. They were not fighters in any sense he understood. They were heavily armored shuttles moving fast and low, weaving between his cruisers like insects. Destroy them, he ordered. His ships fired their energy weapons at the small craft, but the shuttles were too fast and too small. They dodged between the energy beams, using speed and unpredictability instead of shields. Captain Murphy sat in the lead boarding shuttle, checking his equipment one last time. Around him, 40 Marine soldiers did the same. They wore full combat armor and carried weapons designed for close fighting inside enemy ships. 2 minutes to target, the pilot announced. Sergeant Amy Collins, sitting across from Murphy, grinned, behind her helmet faceplate. Think they will know what hit them, Captain? Doubt it, Murphy replied. According to intelligence, they have never seen boarding actions before. Their ships are not designed to repel boarders. Tech specialist Ryan Torres looked up from his equipment scanner. Captain, I am reading their ship layouts. Wide corridors, thin internal walls, no security checkpoints. It is like they built these ships assuming no one would ever fight inside them. Murphy shook his head. These aliens had no idea what real combat looked like. They had spent so long fighting with computers and energy weapons that they had forgotten the most basic truth of warfare. Sometimes you had to get close and personal. 30 seconds, the pilot called out. The boarding shuttle slammed into the side of a Zephyrian cruiser with a sound like thunder. Magnetic clamps locked onto the alien hull, and the cutting torch began burning through the outer armor. Inside the Zephyrian ship, alarms were screaming. The crew ran around in panic, not knowing what to do. They had never trained for this situation because it had never happened before in galactic history. What do we do? A young Zephyrian officer asked his commander. I do not know, the commander replied. Their training covered energy weapon attacks, shield failures, and system overloads, but no one had ever told them what to do if enemies actually came inside their ship. The hull section exploded inward, and smoke filled the corridor. Through the smoke came shapes that the Zephyrians had never seen before. Humans in full combat, armor, carrying weapons that fired solid projectiles instead of energy beams. Captain Murphy stepped through the breach first, his rifle ready. The corridor was exactly as Torres had predicted, wide, undefended, and full of confused aliens who had no idea how to fight at close range. Secure the corridor, he ordered his Marines. Collins, take your squad to the bridge. Torres, get to their computer core. I want this ship taken in 10 minutes. The Marines moved through the Zephyrian cruiser like a force of nature. The alien crew tried to resist, but their energy weapons were designed for ship-to-ship combat, not fighting in narrow corridors. The humans used tactics that the Zephyrians had never imagined. Smoke grenades, flashbang explosives, and coordinated squad movements. Sergeant Collins kicked in the door to the bridge and found the alien officers huddled behind their control panels. They looked at her with wide, terrified eyes. Bridge secure, she reported to Murphy. Back on the USS Vengeance, Admiral Kane watched his boarding parties take control of the alien ship in less than 8 minutes. It was almost too easy. Admiral, Commander Brooks reported, the remaining Zephyrian ships are pulling back to long range. Kane was not surprised. The aliens were trying to get back to their comfort zone, where they could fight with energy weapons at safe distances. But Kane had no intention of letting them recover. Launch fighters, he ordered. Sir, they are not really fighters, Brooks pointed out. They are modified shuttles with weapons attached. I know exactly what they are, Commander. More small craft launched from the Vengeance, but these were different from the boarding shuttles. They were faster, more agile, and carried weapons designed for ship-to-ship combat. But like everything else human, they did not fight the way the galaxy expected. Instead of forming neat squadrons and engaging in organized combat, the human pilots spread out and attacked from every direction at once. They used asteroids for cover, flew in unpredictable patterns, and coordinated their attacks without any apparent central control. Veltar watched his fleet being torn apart by tactics he could not understand. His energy weapons could not track targets that refused to fly in straight lines. His computers could not calculate the best response to enemies that seemed to make decisions randomly. "Commander," Kixara said quietly, "I have finished reading the human military databases." "What did you find?" "They have been at war for their entire history. Every human military tactic has been tested in real combat against other humans. Their weapons, their strategies, their training, all of it comes from actual fighting experience." Veltar finally understood what he was facing. Every other species in the galaxy had evolved past warfare. They had turned combat into a science with rules and predictable outcomes, but humans had never stopped fighting. They had turned warfare into an art form. "How many ships have we lost?" he asked. 6 destroyed, 1 captured, 3 heavily damaged. Half his fleet was gone, and the human ship had barely been scratched. Its physical armor had absorbed everything his energy weapons could throw at it. "Commander," his communications officer said, "we are receiving a transmission from the human admiral. Put it through." Admiral Kane's voice filled the bridge, calm and professional. "Zephyrian Commander, you have 2 choices. Surrender now and be treated according to human military law, or continue fighting and be destroyed. You have 60 seconds to decide." Veltar looked around his bridge at his terrified crew. He thought about his remaining ships and the human vessel that seemed impossible to damage. He thought about the human soldiers who were probably still on his captured cruiser, studying Zephyrian technology and learning how to fight them even better. For the first time in his military career, High Commander Veltar made a decision based on fear instead of mathematics. "Send the surrender signal," he whispered. Admiral Kane looked at the surrender signal flashing on his screen and shook his head. "Belay that order, Commander Brooks. We are not accepting their surrender." Commander Lisa Brooks turned to stare at her admiral. "Sir, they are offering to surrender according to galactic protocols." "Galactic protocols did not stop them from attacking human civilians," Kane replied coldly. "They started this fight. We finish it on our terms." He opened a communication channel to the Zephyrian fleet. "Zephyrian Commander, your surrender is rejected. You attacked innocent people. Now you learn what happens when you wage war against humanity." High Commander Veltar felt his blood turn to ice. No one in galactic history had ever rejected a formal surrender. It went against every rule of civilized warfare. What do they want?" he asked his bridge crew. Strategic analyst Kixara was studying her human databases with growing horror. "Commander, I think they want to make an example of us. In human history, when someone attacked their civilians, they did not just defeat the enemy. They destroyed them completely so others would know not to try again." Veltar could not believe what he was hearing. "But we surrendered. The fighting should be over." "Not by human rules, Commander. On the USS Vengeance, Admiral Kane was implementing something the galaxy had never seen before. Total warfare. Not the mathematical precision of galactic combat, but the complete dedication to victory that humans had learned over 10,000 years of fighting. "Captain Murphy," Kane spoke into his communicator. "Yes, Admiral? How many prisoners did you take from that cruiser?" 47 aliens, sir. They offered no real resistance once we were aboard." "Treat them well, Captain, but I want you to show them something first." "What would that be, sir?" Kane smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "Show them what human soldiers look like when they fight." Captain Murphy understood immediately. He gathered his Marines in the captured cruiser's main cargo bay, where the Zephyrian prisoners were being held. The aliens huddled together, their purple and green scales pale with fear. "Listen up," Murphy told his soldiers. "We are going to give our new friends here a history lesson." Tech specialist Ryan Torres had connected his equipment to the ship's main display screen. What appeared made the Zephyrian prisoners gasp in terror. It was video footage from human military history, Vikings charging into battle with axes and shields, Roman legions marching across ancient battlefields, medieval knights in full armor fighting with swords, World War II soldiers storming beaches under enemy fire. This is how humans have always fought, Murphy explained to the trembling aliens. Not with computers and calculations, with courage and steel. The videos continued. Tank battles from Earth's colonial wars, space marines fighting in the asteroid mines, urban combat on Mars, during the mining strikes. Every image showed humans fighting up close, face to face with their enemies. Sergeant Amy Collins added her own commentary. See how they keep fighting even when they are hurt? That soldier there just lost his arm, but he is still shooting. That Marine is bleeding from 3 wounds, but he keeps moving forward. The Zephyrian prisoners watched in horrified fascination. They had never seen anything like this. In their wars, soldiers retreated when they were injured. Combat stopped when casualties reached 15%. But these humans seemed to fight harder when they were hurt. Why do they not retreat? One of the alien prisoners asked in broken human language. Because retreat means their friends die, Murphy answered simply, and humans do not let their friends die if they can help it. Meanwhile, on the Vengeance Bridge, Commander Brooks was analyzing the remaining Zephyrian ships. Admiral, they are trying to withdraw to long range. They want to fight from a distance, where they feel safe. Then we do not let them feel safe, Kane replied. Launch all fighters, full attack formation. But the human fighters did not attack the way any galactic species expected. Instead of engaging the alien ships directly, they began broadcasting on all frequencies. What they transmitted made every alien crew member stop what they were doing and listen in shock. It was audio recordings from human battles. The sounds of soldiers charging into combat, screaming war cries that had not changed in 10,000 years. The noise of human weapons firing. The voices of human commanders shouting orders under fire. Then came something worse. Human military, music, songs about fighting and dying for your comrades, anthems about never surrendering, battle hymns that spoke of death before dishonor. Dr. Helen Park, the Vengeance's combat psychologist, monitored the alien communications as the broadcasts took effect. What she heard confirmed her theories about galactic psychology. Admiral, she reported, their crew communications are showing signs of panic. Several ships report crew members refusing to man their battle stations. Why? They have never heard anything like our military culture before. To them, combat is a job. To us, it is a calling. They cannot understand enemies who seem to enjoy fighting. The psychological warfare was working better than Kane had hoped. 3 more Zephyrian cruisers stopped firing entirely, as their crews abandoned their posts. The aliens were not cowards, but they had never faced an enemy that seemed to welcome combat instead of avoiding it. Lieutenant Sam Rivera, flying his modified fighter, took advantage of the alien confusion. While the Zephyrian ships were distracted by the broadcasts, he flew his small craft directly into their formation. What he did next had never been attempted in galactic warfare. He began ramming their weapon turrets with his armored fighter. The Zephyrian weapons officer on Veltar's ship watched in disbelief as the human pilot deliberately crashed his small craft into their gun mounts, destroying them one by one. He is sacrificing his ship to damage ours, the officer reported. Why would he do that? Veltar had no answer. In civilized warfare, no pilot would sacrifice his valuable fighter to damage a single weapon turret. The mathematics made no sense. But Lieutenant Rivera was not done. After destroying 3 gun turrets, he ejected from his damaged fighter and used his personal thruster pack to land on the Zephyrian hull. Then he began placing explosive charges on their shield generators. There is a human soldier on our outer hull, the weapons officer screamed. Impossible! No one fights in the vacuum of space. Tell that to the human commander. Rivera finished placing his charges and pushed off from the alien hull. The explosions that followed knocked out 2 shield generators and left the Zephyrian cruiser defenseless. Back on the USS Vengeance, Admiral Kane was receiving reports from all his units. The psychological warfare was breaking the alien fleet's will to fight. The boarding parties had captured 2 more ships. The fighter attacks had disabled 3 others. Admiral, Commander Brooks reported, we have received a priority transmission from Zephyrian High Command. They are ordering their fleet to withdraw immediately. Do we let them go? Kane thought about the 50,000 human civilians on Haven's Rest colony. He thought about the message this battle would send to every other species in the galaxy. He thought about the future of humanity among the stars. Negative. We pursue. What happened next had never occurred in galactic history. A human fleet chased a retreating enemy across 3 star systems, destroying ships that tried to escape and capturing others intact. The Zephyrians could not believe that anyone would continue fighting after the enemy had tried to withdraw. The final battle took place near a Zephyrian military station. High Commander Veltar, down to his last 3 ships, made a desperate transmission to Admiral Kane. "Human Admiral, please. We acknowledge your superiority. We will pay compensation for the colony attack. We offer tribute and territory. What more do you want?" Kane's response was broadcast across the entire Zephyrian fleet and to their military command. His words would be remembered throughout galactic history. "Commander, you made a mistake. You thought war was about mathematics and technology. You thought it was about who had the biggest guns or the best shields. But war is not about equipment. War is about will, and humans have something that your species lost long ago." "What is that?" "We remember what we are fighting for." The last 3 Zephyrian ships surrendered not because their shields failed or their weapons ran out of power, but because their crews could no longer face an enemy that fought with such terrible determination. As Admiral Kane accepted the final surrender, Dr. Park made her report to Earth Command. Her analysis would change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. The Zephyrians and other galactic species evolved past their warrior phase, she explained. They turned combat into a science because they wanted to minimize violence. But humans never stopped being warriors. We just became better at it. The battle was over, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy had just begun. The news of the Zephyrian fleet's defeat spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. In the Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime, representatives from 50 different species gathered in emergency session. They had all received the same impossible reports. A single human warship had destroyed an entire Zephyrian battle fleet. Council leader Thexani, a tall insectoid being with silver carapace, called the session to order. "We are here to discuss the human incident. High Commander Veltar, please explain what happened." Veltar stood before the council, his purple scales now faded to gray with shame. Behind him, the main display showed tactical recordings of the battle. "Honored Council, the humans do not fight like any known species. They use tactics that violate every principle of civilized warfare." "Explain," Thexani commanded. "They rejected our surrender. They pursued retreating ships. They boarded our vessels during combat. They fight as if—" Veltar struggled to find words. "As if they enjoy it." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the council chamber. Meanwhile, 3 star systems away, Admiral Kane was dealing with a problem no human commander had ever faced before. The USS Vengeance was badly damaged from the battle, but they were deep in alien space with no friendly ports for repairs. "Damage report," Kane asked his chief engineer. "Main engines at 60%, Admiral. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. Shield generators are running hot. We need a starbase for proper repairs." Kane looked at the tactical display showing their location. They were surrounded by former Zephyrian territory, with no human support for weeks of travel. Commander Brooks had a suggestion. "Admiral, we have captured 3 intact Zephyrian cruisers. Maybe we can use their technology." "Their technology is completely different from ours." Tech specialist Torres spoke up from his workstation. "Not necessarily, sir. I have been studying their systems. Their energy technology is actually more advanced than ours in some ways. If we could adapt it..." Kane made a decision that would prove to be one of the most important in human military history. "Do it. Strip whatever we can use from the captured ships." What happened next was something no galactic species had ever attempted. The human crew began rebuilding their warship using alien technology.